Today I want to explore a universal fear that holds many of us back, the fear of failure. But even worse, the fear of being seen failing. I'll share personal stories on how this fear impacted me in life and business, and how reframing failure has allowed me to build a life I love. When I was about 5 years old, I had a ballet recital. There was a part where we were all supposed to go around in a circle, but I ended up being the only one who did. The rest of the class just moved on, and I was left spinning alone in front of the whole audience. The crowd laughed, they pointed at me, and I felt like I had ruined it for everyone. I had failed publicly. It wasn't just a mistake, it was failure. I was so embarrassed that I never let myself enjoy ballet after that. This fear of public failure followed me into adulthood and business, where I hesitated to take risks for fear that others would witness my setbacks. When I started my business, that same fear was real. In fact, that was one of the main reasons I spent 1.5 years practicing, writing every week, paying an editor and a designer to get everything down and make sure all my bases were covered before I even tried to go get my first customer. Because after all, once I had launched, what if people saw me fail? It wasn't the fear of failing in private, it was the fear of everyone seeing me fail. Now, when we take a look at what actually happened in that first business, it was not working. The product was not selling. Money was flowing in one direction, out. And I kept pushing forward, trying new ways to do the same things that weren't working, because I was obsessed with not failing in front of others, which drove me to work ungodly hours just to avoid having to close down that business, because I figured that it hadn't failed until I quit. I was so focused on making sure no one saw that business fail that I completely missed the bigger picture. Failure is part of the process of learning. I mean, think about it. Think of anything you've learned. For example, when you learned to tie your shoes, how many times did you have to fail before you learned? When you learned to ride a bike or to drive stick shift, how many times did your car have to turn off at a traffic light before you learned how to master the clutch? The point here is that failure is how we learn. It'll drive us to make new and better decisions, to change our behavior. Failure is very useful feedback. It can guide you towards better results and strategies if we're willing to embrace it, and to allow ourselves to change course without shame. The business couldn't change until I changed. And here's how I changed. I decided I was going to define myself only in terms of how I show up each day, not based on what was going wrong, not based on what was going right, not based on what could happen, or on what other people might be thinking about me, good or bad. I define myself 100% based on how I show up every day. So every day is a new opportunity and a sacred one. Because if I had a massive success yesterday or a massive failure, it doesn't impact at all the energy I bring to today. Only when I changed my mindset did my business prospects change. Only then could I position myself to achieve better results. I could step into what was needed. I could embrace what I really wanted to do. I still fail quite often, and I take the feedback and I adjust. I actually brought one of my businesses to a screeching halt earlier this year because I suddenly saw an essential change we needed to make in the strategy. And I preferred to stop momentum that was taking me in the wrong direction. I'm free to do that now because I've given myself the freedom to fail. Because I define myself based only on how I show up. Embracing failure, reframing it, allowed me to create a completely new business that's brought me immense joy and personal satisfaction. I made a very strategic shift, which I would have never done if I hadn't first failed. Think of people like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. That's a very public failure. And then look at who Steve Jobs became, and look at what Steve Jobs built. So to start wrapping up, there are a few lessons I can leave you today. First, reframe failure. Failure isn't the end, it's just feedback. It's a chance to learn what doesn't work so you can try something that does. Stop worrying about others seeing you fail. No one's thinking about your failures as much as you are. People are busy worrying about their own lives. They're not paying attention to you. Embrace visibility. If you're going to build something great, you need to be out there and be visible. That means being willing to fail in front of others and keep going. Success is born from failure. You can't have success without failure. Failure is necessary to learn, to adapt, and to innovate. Don't let it hold you back. When that fear creeps in, ask yourself, are you really afraid of failure? Or are you afraid of what other people will think if you fail? Be honest with yourself. We fail in silence all the time. Look at all the New Year's resolutions you never even told anyone about and that you didn't achieve either. So if fear has been holding you back, then use it. Harness it and get more visible about where you're going, and use that fear to create accountability for yourself. That is psychological judo. So here's your fast action step for the week. Identify one thing that scares you because you're afraid of failing in public, and take one step towards it. Whether it's posting a video or launching a project, go for it. You'll learn something valuable, I promise. The final thought I want to share with you is a quote from Winston Churchill. Success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. So go out there, fail, learn, and then keep moving forward. I'm Melissa Marchand, grateful to support you with tactics that work for selling your services. And if you know someone else who can benefit from this, please share the episode.